Lisa and I have been secretly married for 7 years. It's all because the Booths don't want to go public with a husband who's in show business. One day, Lisa suddenly said she wanted to bring the kid to my show. I was so excited, but then I watched her and our son become special guests on a Hot New Stars segment. The whole internet was ready to see me embarrassed. The host asked me, "Where's your wife and kid?" Under Lisa's gaze, I chuckled. My wife just left, and I'll just pretend I don't have a kid. When Lisa showed up with Jimmy, the live stream's view count shot through the roof. Did I see that right? Business mogul Lisa on a variety show? I heard she came for someone important. It must be for her mysterious rumored husband. Even the Booth's little one made an appearance. I felt a bit relieved, thinking she had finally come around to supporting my work. Before I left in the morning, as she fastened her cufflinks, she casually said, "Gary, I'll be on your show tonight." I thought she was coming for me, especially since she brought our son. So I reached out to greet Jimmy. Next thing I knew, I felt like I got slapped. I watched mother and son pass me by without a glance, heading to sit in the guest spot with rising star Harry. My hand froze mid-air. I barely whispered his name, Jimmy. Jimmy glanced at me briefly, then turned his eyes back to his mom. In that moment, I saw a hint of coldness in him that he shouldn't have at that age. Suddenly, a wave of nasty comments hit the screen. Gary, the eternal supporting actor, just shamelessly hinted he's Lisa's husband. I bet he's desperate for fame. Finally, we see him get his comeuppance. Are Harry's the main character? Who the hell is Gary anyway? I clenched my hand and looked at Lisa. Did she realize what she'd done? Tonight, her actions would make me a laughingstock. Just as the host was about to bring the conversation back to me, a technical glitch paused the live stream for a bit. Lisa moved to a corner to take a work call. I followed her and asked, "You agreed to come to the show, but you sit with Harry instead?" Once done on the phone, Lisa, with one hand casually in her pocket, nonchalantly said, "Gary, I just said I'd be on the show, not as your guest. Harry's brother promised me a plot of land if I helped out with the crowd. You know, I'm a businesswoman. I chase profits." "Gary, you misunderstood." She explained it away like I was being unreasonable. At that moment, frustration welled up. "Didn't you think about how showing up as someone else's guest would make me look? Didn't you see the troll's insults?" Lisa's face remained calm, seemingly not grasping my confusion. "Gary, if you want to be in showbiz, you need thick skin. Why care so much about what others say?" I felt an overwhelming sense of helplessness rise within me. In our 7 years of marriage, there'd always been this wall we couldn't break down. I turned to leave, but Lisa grabbed my wrist. "Gary, let's head home after this." When she called me Gary during arguments, it was her biggest concession. But I didn't need it anymore. I shook her hand off and walked back into the studio. Live stream resumed, and the host, with a hint of curiosity, asked, "Gary, where's your wife and kid? Did they come?" Lisa raised her head, quietly watching me. Under her gaze, I smiled. "I'm sorry they can't make it. My wife just left. As for the kid, let's just say I don't have one." Lisa pursed her lips, her eyes dark. The comments kept rolling in. Has he lost it? Couldn't lie, so now he's throwing a tantrum? This is hilarious, he didn't even have a wife. Come on. Today, I wasn't letting these trolls have the last word. Earlier, I had a trusted nanny snap a photo in my room. Now I had it up on the big screen. The comments paused for a few seconds, then went nuts. Am I seeing things? Is that Gary and Lisa's marriage certificate? What's Lisa doing, not sitting in her own husband's guest spot and sitting in another guy's? What's wrong with Harry, inviting someone else's wife and kid as guests? Besides me, everyone else had dark looks on their faces. Oddly, I felt a sense of relief and continued to explain. I'm preparing for a divorce, so in my heart, my wife is already gone. I don't plan to fight for custody over the child, nor can I win it. I don't plan to continue recording this show either. After all, with the divorce, I should be getting some money, which will cover the penalty to the production team. After living 20-some years by the book, at this moment, I just want to do things my way. I barely reached the parking lot before my mom called. She berated me right away. Are you crazy? Saying you're divorcing on a live stream? If you get divorced, how's your dad's business going to run? We've been relying on the booths for support these years, don't you know? Go apologize to Lisa and ask for her forgiveness. I cut her off. Today, it was Lisa who embarrassed me first. Why do you care who she supports, which young actor she's backing? Your dad's project has a funding gap. Your brother's gaming company just started and needs Lisa. I couldn't take it and hung up, turning off my phone. A deep weariness filled me. My marriage to them was just a tool to leech off. Turning around, I saw Lisa leaning against my car, looking somewhat out of place. Where's Jimmy? I had the driver take him home first. I stopped the show. There wouldn't be any gossip tomorrow either. Stopping the show, halting the gossip was no surprise. She had the power to do all this. Lisa always handled things decisively, with an innate confidence. She even thought that divorce was something I was merely saying and that, with some persuasion, I'd fall in line. She softly mocked, "Today, with that scene, the internet will have a field day with me." I chuckled back, giving her earlier words. "Lisa, have a strong heart. Why care about what people say?" Lisa froze for a second and held my hand to stop me from opening the car door. "Are you mad because of Harry? I was only in it for that land." I laughed. "Lisa, do you really believe that? When would you ever be in short of some land? Is it because Harry looks like him? That photo in the secret compartment of your bookshelf's second cabinet. Not just Harry, even I resemble him, that's why you married me. Isn't it?" Lisa let go of my hand abruptly, her face turned icy. "In the future, don't touch my bookshelves again." Piercing through the beautiful facade, everything suddenly became clear. Word by word, I told her plainly, "Lisa, there won't be any future. I want a divorce. I was born and then our family business started downhill. And I wasn't exactly the golden child. My mom is a doer. Since sophomore year, she started setting me up on blind dates. I went along with it in exchange for a shot at the entertainment world. Because being an actress, a top actress, was my only dream. At the start, this was my best buddy Evan's dream. But after he was gone, it became mine. Before Lisa showed up, I figured I would end up marrying some not-so-good-looking rich man's love child. But then, an unexpected blind date changed things. Why would a family like the Booths do a blind date with us ordinary folks? My mom was all joyful, cutting off my dad's skepticism. Who cares? Get the big fish while you can. On the day, I sat in front of Lisa like a puppet. From the first look, I admit, I was taken by her presence and looks. While I was wondering why someone so striking would need a blind date, hot coffee splattered on the back of my hand. A new waiter was nervously apologizing. Lisa pulled me over to a faucet, held my hand, running cool water over it. "This will stop it from hurting." Maybe it was that moment of kindness that made me think marrying her wouldn't be so bad. Later, when the Booths came to discuss the wedding at our place, my mom was over the moon, thinking she hit the jackpot. And me? I wasn't objecting. I mean, Lisa was way better looking than any illegitimate daughter. After getting married, Lisa was quite good to me. Except for being against my acting, she didn't lack as a wife. In free time, she'd take me up to G-City's highest peak to watch sunrises. We'd drink the best, most authentic tea. Holding hands, we'd stroll down every street and alley in G-City like typical young couples. She told me she went to college in G-City, so she had a special bond with it. 7 years into the marriage, I discovered she loved G-City because there was someone once there. But like all cliched rich kid love stories, Lisa had a white moonlight, a pure past love that got struck down by family, and he passed away. That whole matchmaking, just Lisa choosing freely after she took over the family business. When I stumbled upon that old photo in the bookshelf, the back read, "To my dearest," and the front showed a boy who bore a resemblance to me. At that moment, I finally understood. I was merely a stand-in. All the sunrises we saw, the tea we drank, the streets we strolled, were memories of her and him, not the love I imagined. In the quiet of the underground garage, you could hear a pin drop. Lisa lit a cigarette and it snapped. Divorce? What about Jimmy? I gave a soft laugh. Did you forget? Your mother says I'm not right to raise a child. He's 6, yet I've barely spent 6 months worth of time with him. Over the years, Lisa's mother had a firm grip on Jimmy's upbringing, grooming him as she did Lisa. You're the one who didn't want him first. Lisa looked down on me. Such a plain sentence, yet it pierced my heart like a needle. I've said it countless times. I didn't reject Jimmy. I had severe depression then. I just couldn't get close. I feared I might harm him. But Lisa would forever ignore my explanations. I once thought she was just cold, focused on her big career, inevitably overlooking the small stuff. Then I realized, without love, nothing really mattered. Over the years, I remembered everyone's birthdays. No one ever remembered mine, except Evan. Unfortunately, Evan is no longer in this world. Lisa sighed. Calm down for a month. Cool off. I cut her off, no need. I'm clear-headed. Even now, she thought I was just throwing a tantrum. As I packed and left the booths, I turned to pick Jimmy up from school. But even though he saw me, he didn't come right away. Later in the car, he frowned slightly. Dad, don't pick me up again. Okay? It's embarrassing if classmates see. Why? I tightened my grip on the steering wheel. Who said Dad is a second-rate actor? In the rear view, he looked down. Grandma and Nana have said so. Mom doesn't like it either. We drove in silence. Back at the parking lot, I asked, what do you think? Jimmy's reply was adult-like and cold. Dad, change jobs. You're selfish. Never think of our feelings. I closed my eyes. Jimmy, has any one of you ever cared about my feelings? You won't be embarrassed anymore. I won't be picking you up ever again. It was my first time speaking to him so coldly. He stood frozen after getting out, bewildered. Without looking back, I drove out of the booth's place. In the rear view, Jimmy and Lisa on the balcony got smaller and smaller, until they disappeared. I glanced at the divorce papers on the passenger seat and sighed. Now skies are wide and oceans deep for me. Lisa never thought Gary would file for divorce, let alone announcing her death dramatically on a live stream. It almost made her laugh in anger. In her memory, Gary was mild-mannered, not overly opinionated. Except for that annoying acting obsession, he ticked the boxes for a husband. Back then, she married him because, besides having a familiar face, he seemed easygoing, less likely to stir up trouble. She's acutely aware of the domineering mother at home. She didn't want petty family issues hindering her business expansion. Post-marriage, her choice seemed right. He was gentle, never quarreled with her mom. Even his movie gigs stayed local. No matter the late hours, he'd come home. Every morning, she caught a light citrus scent in her nose. From his shower gel. She'd turn and bury her face in his neck. Really into oranges? He'd nod, smiling. I love it, so did my good friend Evan. She didn't know Evan, but heard the name often, yet never paid full attention. Maybe she was distracted, or mentally planning new strategies and profits for the company. His words didn't matter, did they? Sometime later, he spoke less and eventually stopped. Communication between them dwindled. On the third day post-divorce, even composured Lisa looked at the orange-scented body wash in the bathroom, feeling oddly irritable. Why are his things still here? The maid bowed her head in apology, quickly cleaning up any trace of Gary. But that night, Lisa, who usually slept well, found herself staring sleeplessly at the new blue sheets. The unfamiliar scent in the air made her uncomfortable. By morning, dark circles had formed under her eyes. Lost in thought for a moment, she called the maid back to return her husband's belongings. The maid was shocked. They had already been thrown out, and there was no getting them back. Lisa felt a lump in her throat. Maybe things work out for the best after all. Divorce counts as a happy occasion, doesn't it? I got an offer from a well-produced show for a casting role. The assistant director explained in detail that if I got the part, we'd be filming constantly in 3 different locations, some in remote areas with tough conditions. But if it turns out well, it could be award-winning. The possibility of winning an award made me forget everything else. No problem, I'm in. Nothing's stopping me from chasing my dreams now. I spent over 20 years as the obedient son. Marriage was my trade for family business and money. I owe them nothing now. I was the booth's son-in-law for 7 years. Played by the rules, devoted completely, only to discover I was a stand-in. Inequitable marriage becomes chains. But I'm free now. This role requires 4 months of intensive, closed-off training. There are 108 of us competing, all entering a training camp. It's both an opportunity and a challenge. At dawn, I get up to train. Then it's relentless horse riding, martial arts, etiquette, and dance training, with horseback riding being a major focus. I went from fearing mounting a horse to riding with one hand while shooting arrows. I endured raw thighs and countless falls on my elbows. Some people joke, "Hey, aren't you the booth's son-in-law? Why's a rich guy working so hard?" I don't hide it. I'm divorced. I'm not anyone's son-in-law. My name's Gary. Others whisper behind my back that a son-in-law from a family like that is spoiled, saying I won't make it past the first cutoff. Before, I'd ignore it, tolerate it. But I won't anymore. It's healthier to vent than to bottle it up, right? I confronted them. How can you guarantee that? With your big mouth? Before she could argue, I turned, jumped back on the horse, and galloped away. In that moment, it felt like I was trampling those doubts underfoot. Time for the final test was running out. I made every second count, living as if 24 hours were 48, exhausted but fulfilled with what I love doing. On the test day, the sun was blazing. Riding fast, focused entirely on the target, I nailed it dead center. Once could be luck, but hitting the bullseye 3 times was a testament. Knowing my overall score was the highest, the blood marks on my palms were my badge of success. That's Gary, impressive, they said. He's perfect for the general role in this show. Gary's performance outshined the others. Despite grueling training, I never once shed tears. But at that moment, I cried because I finally owned my name. Turning, I saw 2 familiar faces I hadn't seen in 4 months. Lisa and Jimmy stood outside the training field. Under the blazing sun, Jimmy's eyes sparkled. "Dad, you looked cool riding and shooting," he said. It was the first compliment I'd heard from him. In his daily life, I was always trying to be involved but remained an outsider. I remember when his kindergarten assigned a lantern craft project. I stayed up all night to make him a rabbit lantern, even though my crafting skills were lacking. 4-year-old Jimmy took one look and pouted, not as good as the one Grandma's teacher made. "Dad, you can't do anything right. That rabbit lantern ended up in the trash." Lisa's mother watched from the stairs, lips curled up in a detached smile. "Don't blame Jimmy. They'd laugh at him for bringing your work to school. How can something made with care be mocked? Even if it's not perfect, it's from the heart." But maybe the booths isn't a place for love. After all, Mike, whom Lisa adored, couldn't even marry her. If not for the fear that Lisa would isolate herself from life after Mike's death, I doubt her mother would have let someone like me, whom she thought little of, join the booths. With these thoughts, I gave Jimmy a small smile. I know I'm cool. What about it? Despite inheriting the booth's aloofness, he was still a 6-year-old boy, unable to hide his feelings. Grandma was wrong. Dad's job isn't just about wearing nice clothes and looking sad. Lisa's eyes dimmed slightly. "Jimmy." I smiled and said, "Grandma's either mean or jealous of how young and handsome I am." Jimmy paused and then said softly, "Dad, my birthday's next month. Will you come home?" "No, actors don't deserve to attend your birthday, little buddy." Jimmy's eyes reddened, ready to argue. Lisa interrupted him. "Go wait in the car. I need to talk to your dad." Jimmy respected Lisa too much to disobey. Reluctantly, he walked toward the car, glancing back at me repeatedly. Looking up, I met Lisa's gaze. She stared intently, with a slight smile. "Gary, why does it seem like you've changed since the divorce?" Raising an eyebrow, I replied, "Does that matter to you? If you've got something to say, say it. I'm busy and not indulging in your chatter." It was a line she once used on me. "Cat got your tongue?" I turned to leave, but she held my arm tightly. "Gary, happy birthday." Divorced, yet she remembered my birthday? I pried her fingers off, one by one. 7 years, a belated wish, who'd be happy with that? I walked past her into the training camp, leaving Lisa unexpectedly lonely. Quickly, I immersed myself in intense filming with the crew. Sometimes, A scene demanded 10 to 20 takes due to acting, partners, or scripts. But no matter how tiring, it was never as exhausting as seeing Lisa repeatedly. Her car always parked a distance from my way back to lodging. Never came with empty hands, either flowers or Michelin star chef's treats. Things she never did before, things she'd never do. She was proud, aloof, and never flaunted our relationship before. Now she seemed unashamed of it. At first, actors on set looked at me with envy. "Gary, is your ex-wife really Lisa? Up close, she's really pretty. Is she here to reconcile? Will you two get back together? She's gorgeous." I told them in a casual way. She was carrying the memory of a lost love in her heart. And for 7 years, I was just the stand-in. She didn't fall for me during those 7 years of marriage, so there's no reason she'd suddenly like me after a divorce, right? Do you really think I should dive back into the same pit? Become the Booth's son-in-law again with no freedom and no emotional value? My only use was a business connection for my parents. They all waved their hands and said no thanks. After that, they no longer looked at Lisa with admiration. Sometimes they'd whisper to me, "That dead woman is back again." Lisa got out of the car, looking a bit worn out. She had a rough time with insomnia on this latest overseas business trip. "Gary, where'd you buy that body wash you used? I think that orange scent might help me sleep." I gave a small smile. "I mix it myself, you can't buy it anywhere." She paused for a moment. "Well, could you?" "No, I can't," I replied. Nor did I want to do anything for her anymore. She didn't get upset, just pulled out a watch from her pocket and handed it to me. "You said you liked vintage watches." As she spoke, the watch slipped between our fingers and hit the ground, collecting dust. I hadn't even reached for it. She raised an eyebrow at me. "Don't like it?" "I like it, just not when you give it to me," I answered. Confusion flitted through her eyes. I made it clear. "Lisa, the best kind of ex is the kind that's dead to you." I recalled something she'd told me in the past. "Gary, I really don't like it when people say my husband is a third-rate actor, you get me? So, we spent 7 years in a secret marriage. History doesn't repeat, but it sure does rhyme. Lisa, I really don't like people always bringing up my ex-wife Lisa. Don't come back, you get me?" And with that, I walked off on her again. Lisa suddenly felt a slight pain near her heart, especially when the watch hit the ground. She picked it up for a look, then tossed it in a perfect arc into a nearby artificial lake. After the ripples settled, all was calm. It was the first time she ever did something like this, something she used to think was childish. She thought she was going crazy since the day she couldn't beat her insomnia post-divorce. It felt like some factor in her blood was waking up, yelling at her to reassess her relationship with Gary. That night she couldn't sleep again, so she drank until she was tipsy and invited an old friend over to drink with her. Her friend swirled her wine, giving Lisa a puzzled look. "Are you realizing post-divorce that you actually love your ex-husband?" Lisa's hand froze for a moment, then she chuckled. "Maybe I'm just not used to it." Her friend laughed. "Compared to the one before, who do you feel more comfortable with?" she said, referring to Mike, the upperclassman from college. Mike was the heartthrob of the university, handsome, bold, and when he liked someone, he fell hard. He pulled out all the stops to woo Lisa, and it was campfire gossip around the whole school. Young Lisa was naturally drawn to such a charming guy. On the day they officially got together, Mike handed her a photo, seriously insisting she sign it, marking her true love. "Lisa, I want to be your most beloved man." She kept that photo for years, subconsciously. Later, Lisa's father broke them up. In their family, it was okay to date casually, but serious intentions, forget it. He struck at her psyche with the coldest words. "Your aunt slept with that boy." That day, she broke it off with Mike in the sports car. He bit his lip, tears falling. "I didn't. An event host tricked me into going. Nothing happened. I ran. Believe me." Lisa scoffed. "You think my dad would lie to me?" Mike, proud as he was, demanded to get out of the car. During the scuffle, a truck hurtled toward them. Everything went dark, ending in regret. Lisa's father indeed lied. He wanted his daughter to marry someone from a wealthy family, not an orphan like Mike. Lisa skipped her father's funeral years later. Mike became her buried guilt, unrelated to love, just guilt. If she'd believed him, if she hadn't passed out that day and could have pulled him from the car, maybe he wouldn't have died. After a bottle of booze and a heartfelt recount, her friend patted her shoulder. That's guilt, not love. Think about it, if Gary were there instead, what would you do? Lisa was silent for a long time. She took a big drink, her throat bobbing. Then I'd die with him, she finally said, slightly intoxicated and self-deprecating. It was a rare day off for the crew. The third female lead shyly invited me to a movie. I politely declined. I'm focusing on my career, no dating plans now. She handed me the ticket anyway. Watch or not, up to you. If you ever plan to date, let me get in line. I laughed at her honesty. But then I looked up, meeting Lisa's calm gaze with Jimmy by her side. I rubbed my forehead. Here we go again. Half an hour later, we were sitting in a cafe. Jimmy, with his little chin raised, said, "Dad, I don't want you to date that person." I propped my chin on my hand, smiling. You're not even grown yet, and you act like a mini tycoon? You live in a big villa on the hill, not by the sea, don't concern yourself too much. Jimmy clenched his little fists. Dad, you've changed. I don't like how cold you are to me and Mom. I took a sip of coffee. Really? I kind of like who I am now. Pouty, he accidentally knocked over his juice, spilling it on his white shirt. Lisa frowned slightly. Go to the washroom and clean up. When Jimmy left, I dropped the thin mask I wore, frowning at Lisa. Didn't I say not to come find me? She ignored the question. Was that person trying to pursue you? I laughed in frustration. Lisa, we're divorced now. Who I'm with, what I do, is my business. Gary, can we go back to how it was? Lisa asked. Jimmy wants you home. She's 7, can't grow up without her dad. Maybe you could soften a bit for the kid. I can change all the things you used to dislike. I felt it. This was the most earnest Lisa could be about mending things between us. For someone so privileged, she's probably never had to plead before. Lisa, it's over. We can't go back, I said. That little bit of regret I had about you, really, it doesn't have anything to do with me anymore. Lisa is starting to feel like she's losing it. Even after being turned away so many times, she just can't let go. Gary is gentle and kind, and she hopes that if she holds on long enough, he'll eventually come around. In the past, her guilt over Mike kept her from opening up to anyone else. But 10 years have passed, and she knows it's time to move on. The day she finally burned Mike's photos, Harry unexpectedly turned up at her door. Lisa, as a favor between cousins, can you help me one last time? Harry was Mike's cousin, and last time he used Mike's name for a live stream. Lisa stared at Harry intensely for a while. What is it? Lisa, my movie's premiering next month, but another film's premiering at the same time and it'll steal my spotlight. Can you help push back their release a few months? Harry knew Lisa had the power to make it happen. That's the power of money, right? But what Lisa didn't know was how much she'd regret this choice in the future. She called her assistant and assigned this shady task. Her assistant hesitated. Lisa, the lead in that movie is Gary. Are you sure about this? Lisa paused for a moment. It's just a delay of a few months, not a cancellation. I'll make it up by promoting his movie more later. Just do it like Harry asked. After the filming wrapped, a rough cut was ready. The crew watched it, and everyone was thrilled. The director was especially excited, saying, "This cast is amazing. This film is going to be big." The oldest member, Emma, who played my grandma, was especially excited. She was 93 and despite having a career in TV, this was her first and last film. If I can see it on the big screen, I'll die content, she said with a smile. I reassured her, just 2 more months, it'll happen soon. But life is unpredictable. The film was unexpectedly ordered to undergo changes and its release indefinitely delayed. The joy vanished under a cloud of disappointment. Emma was old, and sudden illness at her age was common. She lay in the hospital, tears in her eyes, wishing she could see the film before she passed. My words of comfort felt stuck in my throat, impossible to say. She died before it ever premiered. I sat on a bench outside the funeral home for a long time, thinking. I recalled my best friend Evan, who had lost his hair when he was terminally ill. His family and I tried hard to keep his condition from him. He raised his frail arm and said, half-jokingly, "How can I be a handsome actor looking like this?" I choked up and said, "You'll get better, you'll win awards, and I'll be there cheering." But Evan held my hand tightly. "If I'm not around, stay away from rooftops, okay? Life will offer hope. You can't give up on the world or yourself because of your family." He knew everything despite our efforts. "Gary, I'm not going to make it, but if you enjoy acting, please make that dream come true for both of us. Okay? You're a man of your word, Gary." Evan was afraid I'd try to end my life again because of my family. He must have thought that once he was gone, no one would be there to pull me back from the edge. He wanted me to live, so I did. His dreams became my dreams. But weren't his regrets the same as Emma's? In my childhood, I was powerless to change Evan's fate. Now, once again, I couldn't fulfill Emma's last wish. I felt deeply helpless. That's when the director told me the truth. The film's delay was due to Lisa's influence. Rage burned through me like fire. Without her meddling, Emma's wish could have been granted. I was certain I'd win an award and fulfill Evan's wish. I went to see Lisa, for the first time since our divorce. She looked surprised, a bit happy. I used all my strength and slapped her so hard my hand stung. Lisa's face hardened. "Gary, that was too much. You can't just bully me because I like you." I laughed bitterly. "Lisa, this is how you show your love? By suppressing the movie I worked so hard on. For Harry? You ruined someone else's dreams for your own selfish reasons." "Gary, he's Mike's cousin. I just wanted to ease my guilt." I had pieced together her past with Mike from various people. Though I didn't know him personally, I mourned for a young life lost to a relationship. "Lisa, if you were so devoted, you should have died with Mike. Why drag others down with your guilt?" Lisa's fingers trembled slightly, her face never more disheveled. Her voice was hoarse. "Gary, I wanted to start anew with you. You might not believe it, but I realize now that I do love you." Standing in the doorway, I smirked coldly. "Maybe, Lisa, but I've started to hate you." From the moment Gary said he hated her, Lisa knew there was no hope for them. She couldn't face Gary anymore. So, she secretly followed his life online like a shadow. Her insomnia worsened. Her doctor said it was all in her head. But her heart had no cure now. 5 months later, the movie starring Gary finally premiered. Its high production value and stellar performances led to both critical and financial success. When Gary stood on stage accepting his Best Actor award, Lisa and her son Jimmy were in the audience. "Mom, Dad looks amazing, like he's glowing." "He's amazing. He achieved his dream," Lisa nodded. Then she whispered, "And I lost him." That year, on G City Street, Gary disappeared after a phone call. But when she turned around, there he was, holding out 2 ice creams with a cheeky grin. "Have some, it's sweet." "I won't disappear. I'll stick with you." The moment she turned around, Gary was already standing in the spotlight. But there was an unbridgeable chasm between them. After the awards ceremony, she asked the butler to take Jimmy home first. She drove alone on the loop highway, trying to shake off the frustration that wouldn't disappear. The radio happened to be playing gossip about Gary being the newly crowned Best Actor. "Gary, I heard you're ready for a new relationship. Is that true?" His voice was clear and confident. "Life goes on. If you meet the right person, why not give it a try?" As the host congratulated him, Lisa's speed raced up. Unknown dangers loomed like a beast. A section of the overpass collapsed. If Lisa had slowed down, if she'd hit the brakes, there might have been a chance. But she did nothing. At that moment, she inexplicably gave up on all actions. Gary was right. When Mike died, she should have died with him. She never cherished what she had. She tried to make up for her guilt over Mike's death with Gary. What could replace the regret of losing Gary? As the car tumbled down the hill, she longed to ask him, "Gary, if I die, will you miss me like you miss Evan?" But she knew he wouldn't. She wasn't worthy. When the host announced Gary's name, I almost went deaf for a second. The director and co-actors smiled and urged me on the stage. Holding that crystal-clear trophy, I genuinely felt I'd made it. The world is vast, and only hard work lives up to time. Evan, I did it. I got the best actor crown. Did you see it? I didn't lie to you. I achieved our dream. In that moment, I seemed to see Evan sitting in the audience, applauding with his toothy grin. Tears filled my eyes. In my youth, I insisted my parents love me equally, wanting them to love me like they loved my brother. It was a depression I couldn't shake. After marriage, I pursued equal affection from my wife and kids, but never got it. Now I understand. Self-love is what makes you fearless because the deepest confidence comes from an abundant heart. The awards ceremony ended and I got a call from an unknown number. It was my mom. Her voice was old and weary. Gary, I'm sick. I've been sick for a long time. Didn't want to bother you, but could you come see your mom? No, let your other son see you. She's always had the perks of being your favorite. So now it's her turn for responsibilities. I hung up and blocked the number. Cutting ties with a toxic, loveless family seemed necessary. I thought after winning a big award, I'd sleep in the next day. But an early call woke me up. My assistant said Lisa drove off the mountain last night. She didn't survive. The Booths are looking for you, probably want to invite you to the funeral. I was stunned for a few seconds. Just say no. There's no rule saying an ex-husband has to attend his ex-wife's funeral. I didn't really want to see her when she was alive. Now she's gone. There's even less reason. She was just a part of my past, bound to fade into dust. The sunlight gently slipped into the room. I drew the curtains and found the lotus flowers in the community pond blooming. The petals layered and full, and the lily pads spread out, jade green, lively and vibrant.